When I found out I had cancer, people coming out of the woodwork, they wanted to help, and they did. I can't tell you how many of you have told me tonight that you're praying for me. As I wrote in Christianity Today, it makes you weightless. I cannot explain it. But from time to time, you'll get a shiver, and you'll just know somebody's praying. And you will realize that your cares, in fact, are being borne by others. People want an excuse to do something good. That is what it means to be an American. That is something special about us. So when I talk about approaching the tasks at hand with a sense of joy, realize that you do not enter these battles unarmed. In fact, you've got the most powerful armament of all. You've got faith, you've got friends, you've got family. You have the ability to fight for things that you love, and you will always conquer those who are trying to be negative because you have something better. So here we are, American politics. You know, I already told you the last 7 years have been miraculous, but I want you to think about the world we're living in right now. You already know about the terror threat. It's real. And by the way, if a Democrat should be elected president, they're not going to leave Iraq. I'll have to explain it later, but they're not going to. But let me talk about some other things that are going on, because we live in a time that is made for us. Absolutely made for us. You know the challenges in fighting for life. You can already see, again, the declining abortion rates, something happening, people actually staying married a little tiny bit longer. But what we have to do when we talk about marriage is not merely lay out the traditional values, but the joy of it. I mean, I was pretty hard to domesticate. Oh, I was awful. I came to Washington. I was going to be a big shot and go to all the parties. And finally one day I woke up and I thought, you know what? Why don't I just make it clear to this woman that she's my life? And boy, has life been better. I'm serious. Because there's a comfort and joy in knowing that you've got a life's partner, and there's a richness that comes from it, and we love each other more than ever before. And I got to tell you, I've given my wife more headaches and heartaches and everything else. But it is something glorious and special and happy to fight for. Life. The gift of life. We are pro-life. When we talk about being pro-life, it is not merely saving the babies, but creating for them the conditions in which they can grow up and enjoy all the blessings of liberty from the day they are born to the instant they die. Not with assistance from anybody else, but because God said it's your turn. Now let's talk about the world around us, because it's really exciting. The Dallas Fed we have an explosion of creativity around this globe. Just think of it this way. Look at your kids or your grandkids' Christmas lists. Yeah, you know what I mean. You don't understand any of this stuff, do you? We're real old-fashioned. We don't buy Game Boys or any of that stuff, but this year we bought some stuff, some gamey stuff for our kids. One of them is this dance thing. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Okay. For those of you who know what I'm about to talk, you sit there and you watch the TV, and they've got these goofy dance characters, and you can move your feet here, 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 with both of them, and they're bouncing all over the place. But these little flashes come up to tell you what you're supposed to do. Well, I try to do it, and in 15 seconds, I've engaged in my own personal game of Twister, and I'm in agony on the mat. But my kids are looking at this stuff, and they get it. There's also a guitar thing. I play guitar in a rock band. I can't play this stupid game. Because I can't understand what it's telling me to do. But my kids do. It's amazing. All this data flowing in, and they're getting it, and they're digesting it. They think differently than we do. And it's not merely all the creepy music they listen to. It's in point of fact that they have entered into a world where there are many different ways to get information, and they're sucking it in. The Dallas Fed a couple of years ago tried to just do a sort of back-of-the-envelope estimate of how much new information was going to enter the global economy that year 2006. Their estimate was the equivalent of 37,000 libraries of Congress, which comes out to roughly 629 billion volumes. 1 year. New York Times reports that every year, The amount of data going over the internet, which includes pictures and sound and the whole thing, increases 50%. There's an explosion going on. Look at what's going on with the rest of the world. Economies vibrant and growing. The Chinese and Indian economies are doubling at worst every decade, and sometimes every 7 or 8 years. Doubling. All over the globe, people have learned from the American experience. Meanwhile, here in the United States, we're living in the past. We have raised taxes on everybody. We've got the worst business atmosphere in the entire industrialized world. I'm not making it up. Only China has a higher business income tax rate. We got a higher capital gains rate. What we've said to people is, you know what? We would rather build a government based on envy rather than one on ambition and creativity. What's that about? We can do better than this. We can do better than this because we're the ones who set off the tsunami of creativity in the first place. We are the ones who showed the entire rest of the world how to do this. So this lays before us as a challenge. Nobody talking about it. Have you heard any candidate mentioning the fact that the rest of the world's exploding and we're sitting around worrying about whether Colombia is going to kill us from a trade standpoint? I sit up at nights just scared to death about the Colombians. Here's a country that has supported us in the global war on drugs, whose own president has risked his life and limb, and the Congress of the United States, meanwhile, Hugo Chavez, by the way, spent $300 million supporting the drug lords, trying to bring him down, and we have a Congress of the United States that's saying we're with Hugo Chavez and not with President Uribe. That's crazy. It's time for us once again to reassert our destiny. There are opportunities out there. Also, you've often heard it said that the United States, people don't trust the United States, we've lost our place in the world. Baloney. Think of it this way. If there's a tsunami, a tornado, hurricane, fire, natural disaster, a meteor strike, I don't care what it is, who do you think they call first? France? Proof's in the pudding, ladies and gentlemen. They call us because they know of our sense of decency. Let me give you a couple of stories from the war, because you need to understand how powerful and deep this runs. A kid named Mark Daly goes off to war about 1.5 years ago. He's a student in a university in California. His wife grew up in a captive communist nation. He felt very strongly that as long as anybody in the world was being oppressed, it was the special destiny of Americans to reach out and help them. So he goes off and he fights, first in Anbar province, and then he's up leading a platoon in Mosul. And he writes these incredible dispatches. Some talk about the horrors of war, but more often than not, he's talking about the Iraqi people because something extraordinary was happening. Here you had Americans fighting, but day by day, sort of operation by operation, the Iraqis realized that the United States wasn't there to conquer and kill and steal the oil. We're there to liberate. So Daly writes that he's talking to a tribal leader one day, and the tribal leader, because he gets platoon leader, he's a guy who's dealing with the local leaders. And the guy looks at him and says, I finally figured out the difference between you and Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda gets paid to take a life, you get paid to save a life. Well, Mark Daly gave a life. He died in an explosion. It's actually in a book just written by a fellow named Michael Yon. It was an interesting surprise. It was such a powerful explosion that the Humvee got knocked 200 yards in the air. He and his guys died instantly. But if you read his dispatches, there's more joy and more idealism than you are likely to see in anything that emanates from Capitol Hill ever, because here's a guy who got it. The United States is sprinkling seeds of hope in a desert, a place where there has never been an experience of freedom. And they are starting to see that this country, one nation under God, a nation that has been informed even down to its taproot by the belief that we are a nation made great by our faith and our love of others. And they're getting it. The surge has worked in Iraq because we have begun to disclose who we are. Not merely the fiercest warriors on earth, but also the kindest people.